Good morning, national audience. How you getting on? This is the morning Real Scottish Politics live show, and with me, Ninian Wilson, one of the multimedia reporters here at the National, and Abby Garton Crosby, one of our political reporters, just back from our holidays. So yeah, I think we'll just start as we usually do. Let's have a little look at the front page.
Yeah, this is a very interesting front page for me to come back to as someone who's
elected. Oh, I think we might have had a wee internet
I can hear
issue
you now.
there.
There was...
Sorry, Abby, would you want to...
It's all right. No, I was just saying that it's a very interesting front page to come back to because Malcolm Offord's usually quite quiet within the Scotland office ever since that he was kind of made PR back in October 21. I like to tell people in the office that he ran away from me once in Dover House. It wasn't actually me, but I did see him running down a corridor when the Scottish Press pack came in. So he's not really been one to kind of speak out very much. So yeah, this was interesting. And on Northern Ireland as well. So what can you run us through a bit about what you were saying, Ninian? Sorry, I just thought it was such an interesting story that you put out on the media rounds at all, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, you touched on a few things actually, but I mean, with that, relating to the top line claim there, he was asked, have we been conned over these Brexit negotiations? And he said, well, no. And then he kind of said quite flippantly, anyone who's been, grown up and known politics in the last 40 years knows how difficult Northern Ireland has been. And it's like, well, yeah, it seemed like quite a casual way to describe, political tensions there. But then he touched on other things as well, like the civil service job cuts, and seemed to suggested that the farming and fishing industries would be a suitable and logical next step for civil servants will be soon out of a job, which is quite again. I mean, we'll touch on this sort of like detached from reality view that Tories take on people's jobs and livelihoods and how they survive cost of living crises. But
it's not surprising if you look at Offord's actual history himself that he said something along those lines, because this guy is a financier. He's made loads of his own money, millionaire, rich. And he stood for election as an MSP on the list in Lothian, I think. So Lothian last year, didn't get in. 6 months later, he's got his ermine coat on and he's in the House of Lords. And he was put into the Scotland office above two actual serving Tory MPs, so Andrew Bowie and John Lamont. So he was just it was an actual literal parachute-in job over some of the other Tory MPs. So he's not going to have the experience of working in a civil service job and trying to find something in a similar industry, is he? Because he's just been parachuted into a job that was made for him, So it's not a surprise that he's saying things like that. I would say it's more of a surprise that they put him out on the media round. They must have been desperate if it was Offord that they put out to actually defend those sorts of things. Yeah, so very interesting.
Elsewhere on the front page, fewer than half of Scots support the monarchy. Which,
not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the more interesting parts of that story was just how it's just another kind of signpost of how views in Scotland are diverging from the rest of the UK. 6 in 10, I think across the UK it was 6 in 10 people still wanted to see the monarchy survive in some form, and obviously stark contrast up here. So, and obviously and quite topical as well, just after what happened with Prince William's appearance at Abby, you might have been on holiday for that, but the FA Cup final, Prince William was booed while making an appearance. I think there might have been some booing for the "For God Save the Queen" as well when it was played. So, sign of the times.
Very interesting. I mean, I've always thought that I don't know if we actually did the story, but I remember there was a map with Jubilee celebrations and it was full of England and there was not a single one north of the border. It just kind of shows that Scottish people are really not that interested in the monarchy and the Jubilee things that are going on So yeah, I think you're right. It does show a bit of a divergence in those kind of things. So not a surprise, to be honest. They always say they're going to send the royal up here to make it better, and then none of them want to come, do they? So I don't think that's ever going to work.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a tough paper round for them really up here. I think. Yeah, and then we've got Nicola Sturgeon is in Washington, obviously at the moment, and she'll be doing a speech at the Brookings Institute. She'll be talking about Scotland's role in tackling the climate emergency and our unique position in securing Europe's energy security. I think it's been Signal should be talking about the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and how that will play into those discussions. And obviously, there's back home. There's been quite a big backlash. Well, from
happens every time. Like it does.
Saying that she's abandoning local issues, can't be bothered being first minister anymore. She's off and jolly to Washington. But obviously, if you're being the foremost, the top politician in Scotland, your job is to relay and interact with the rest of the world and show what Scotland's all about, out beyond our own shores. So I mean,
I feel like reading that story when I came back that I was back at COP26, because the exact same thing happened where she was there. And the irony of that, though, was that it was coming from like Anna Sarwar and Douglas Ross, who were all at COP26 as well. So they were moaning at her for being at COP26 when they were also there. Like, I think everybody from every party was there at some point. But yeah, it's not a surprise to me that the Tories are nitpicking over that, to be honest. That's what John Swinney's there to stand in for her when she goes away. That's why we have a deputy first minister. Dominic Raab does the exact same for Boris Johnson. And think of where he's been in the past 6 months. Saudi Arabia, he's been to Ukraine a few times, he's been to Poland. He goes off all the time. Like, whenever there's some sort of scandal, he's off. But Sturgeon takes one trip and it's all from the Scottish Tories. So yeah, just typical stuff from them, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that should be about 6 o'clock tonight. So our time, 6 o'clock, that she'll be speaking. It's 1 o'clock their time and done about 7. So there'll be something probably up from the late team on what she's been saying. But I do think it's interesting that she's talking about the kind of green stuff, because when I spoke to Patrick Harvey in the kind of run up to the election about what he thought the kind of main difference would be in the independence campaign, like when that kind of kicks off, was energy. And the kind of green energy, and how Scotland, like if you think comparing back to 2014 when it was all about oil, like, and how that shifted now to green energy and stuff. And obviously the First Minister's talking about green things. So I think that's a thing to watch out for, to be honest, is how all that green energy and the things that she says about that, and looking forward, because it is a really big potential in Scotland, and it is going to be one of those things that comes up a lot in the next year or two, I would say, for sure, when we're moving over to renewables to kind of get
absolutely.
that way. So
yeah, I think I'm sure Steph Braun had an article on up yesterday about Scottish Greens not being too happy about approval of or imminent approval of new North Sea gas projects. So this it's a shifting discussion, and it's all. You're absolutely right, Abby. It's definitely something you need to keep keeping an eye out on these days. So maybe just talking about what's happened today, a little bit more recent. I think it's all over social media at the moment, and we've got a couple of pieces up on ourselves this morning. Rachel McLean, Tory Home Office Minister, she was giving advice in the classic Tory tone on how to manage a cost of living crisis, and I think her advice was work more hours, get a higher paid job, which is well, I think you
where do you start?
Yeah, where do you start? It's like the sun. You can't look at it it's hard to take in it all at once.
I mean, if you think about the fact that wages, a general wage is probably it's nowhere near enough these days, and wages are not going up with inflation. Like, I think inflation's at like nearly 8%. Bear in mind, sorry to everyone watching, I have been on holiday, so these figures will not be exact. But inflation has got really high. Everything's getting more expensive. I notice it when I go at my daily shop or weekly shop, that like things are getting more expensive. It costs more for like my standard 20p Morrison spaghetti that I buy. That's 25p now. Like, people are like trying, and what do you want them to work 80 hours a week to still not be able to survive. Like, it has to come from government level, and it's a typical Tory thing to just put that on the individual. Is like, you're not working hard enough, when it's not their fault, you know. Like, people are struggling and the government should be intervening, and they're not. So it's just typical from the Tories, passing the blame on to everybody else except themselves, who created this mess, to be fair.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's again what we were talking about earlier from the unelected Tory peer story. That's our splash. It's just, again, just another sign, another signal that this, that UK government, they have absolutely no idea what it's like for the man on the ground. And the solutions they propose just aren't practical, not realistic, and probably quite disheartening for people to hear. Maybe people that are actually really struggling, and they they look to the government for help and support, and that's what they hear, and it's probably quite demotivating, actually.
I mean, the rise in food banks in itself during the time that the Tories have been in power should speak to the fact that they have created the majority of this mess. Do you know what I mean? And they just take absolutely no responsibility for it. So, yeah, it's just, I'd expect one a week of a Tory minister coming out. And I also did not see Jack Monroe, who is she's a TV chef. She also does a lot of budget work. I think she's doing some sort of defamation suit against a couple of Tories that came for her at the weekend. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but I will look into it, because Jack does a lot of really good stuff with budgeting and showing people how to make really cheap meals. But even she's been saying, even with that does not solve the issue. People can't budget their way out of this. You know, it's not possible. Absolutely. So, yeah.
That's actually one of the things. One of the things that struck me about reading that story this morning was I felt like I'd read it. I think I felt like I'd already read that story like 10 times before. So actually, just to give it a little insight into just what to look forward to. We've spoken to about what's happened yesterday and what's on the front page. So one of the things I'll be working on today is actually just a sort of a review, a roundup of all the terrible Tory budget tips we've ever had. And obviously, today's will probably definitely be on there. But I mean, just casting my mind back when millennials were told to stop buying expensive frothy coffees and avocados, and you might be able to afford the deposit on your mortgage. Last week we were people are using food banks because they don't know how to cook. Learn how to cook, things like that, like tidbits like this, these little nuggets of information and insight.
It's ridiculous when you think of that, because sometimes people can't afford the equipment to cook. Do you know how expensive cooking equipment is? Like, to be able to do that, do you know what I mean? Some people have just got a microwave in one pot. Sorry, that really annoys me. Like, when you think about it, like, things are very expensive, a lot of people can't afford to do those things. But yeah, sorry, continue what else you've got going on today.
Yeah, I think I'll probably be going a little bit more local with what I'll be writing today. Probably want to touch on Jenny Gilruth opening up unveiling the new projects in the A92, A96 around Aberdeen, and maybe a little travel story from the Isle of Lewis as well. Just introduction of some new electric bikes that have been given to the island to help transport around there. So yeah, I'm going a little bit local today.
Nice.
Up to the regions, I think. So and then obviously my piece on just looking back on all the terrible bits of advice we've had in the Tories, how to deal with our very real problems.
Yeah, as I'm just back from holiday, I don't have much on the go today, but I will be looking probably at what's going on in Northern Ireland, which is the opposite of what you're doing, because I'm obsessed. And also Boris Johnson's over there today. So it's really interesting for those who don't know. Very quick recap. Sinn Féin for the first time won the highest vote share, and they are in control of Stormont. Well, I say that. They're in control, but they need the DUP to take the Deputy First Minister position and to basically agree to power share, and that's all under the Good Friday Agreement, in order for Stormont to get working again, which it hasn't been for years. So very interesting. Boris Johnson's going to go there today, but the Sinn Féin are not, like, they basically said that they won't take a pep talk from Johnson, and that they're accusing him of basically encouraging the DUP to kick up over the protocol, because the DUP, who are the unionist party and who basically were in control last time but fell down the vote share, a lot of that going to an even further right unionist party, actually, which is very weird, but not surprising. So yeah, they've been basically calling for Article 16 to be triggered, which would allow the UK to suspend parts of the protocol, and that they could do whatever they want, basically, because they're saying it's interfering with trade and whatnot. whereas Sinn Féin have obviously said that they're happy with the protocol, everything's good for them. So it's just kind of an argument going back and forth over that at the moment. So we'll see what happens with Boris Johnson later this afternoon. So I'll probably have something that up later once the meeting is over. But that's all I've got on my plate today. Hopefully we'll find something more.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. Excellent. Well, guys, as ever, if there's anything you want us to talk about or anything you want to say, the comment box is there. Please let us know. And just have a great day, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.